I think what makes The Thing so uniquely terrifying is how it cultivates an all-encompassing feeling of paranoia from the moment the monster is introduced all the way to the very end. And the way the film achieves this is nothing short of masterful. Like, I love horror. Horror is one of my favourite genres, but so many of these films fall flat because they think all you need is a spooky monster, a few set pieces where said monster comes after the protagonist, and hey presto, you've made a great horror story. Yeah, that is simply not enough. What a lot of these mediocre horrors never quite understand is that merely threatening the lives of your characters is not enough to create that most chilling kind of horror. If you want to do that, well, there's quite a bit you need to do, to be fair, but the biggest part is instilling this pervading sense of uncertainty all the way through your story, because great horror is more than just the occasional moment of shock. It's about cultivating and maintaining an atmosphere that leaves the viewer on the edge of their seat from the word go right to the very end. For a taste of how The Thing achieves this, let's look at the final scene, what I would argue to be the best ending in all of horror. We have the two survivors in the snow, the monster being destroyed now a mere silver lining as they're both going to freeze to death. A sufficiently grim ending if there's ever been one. But throughout this scene, there's a question both Macready and the audience are asking. Is Childs infected? Is he the Thing, or is he not? And there's something about how this question's tackled that's fascinating from a writing point of view. Take when Childs walks up and asks,
"You the only one who made it?"
The thing is, what he just did is a Freudian slip, because assuming he is the Thing, he would know that everyone else is dead already, including Childs, because he's imitating him. So when he asks, "Are you the only survivor?" he gives away that he doesn't consider himself a survivor. This is a beautifully subtle clue that leans us towards thinking this guy is probably the monster, but the issue is this clue is just vague enough that it could also mean, of the group who went to fight the monster who I didn't join, are you the only one that made it? We don't know, and let's also not forget the others were dead certain Macready was the monster earlier and they turned out to be wrong, and Macready's been dead certain that other characters are the monster and it's turned out he was wrong, so we feel as if we can hardly trust our judgment anyway because we've been gaslit to hell. But countering all that, Childs did mysteriously vanish just before the climax, which is pretty suspect, so naturally Macready asks,
"Where were you, Childs?" "Thought I saw Blair. I went out after him. Got lost in the storm."
Which is an excuse that sounds bullshit, but it's just plausible enough that it could be true. And then, of course, at the very end, something wonderful happens. For context,
if a small particle of this thing is enough to take over an entire organism, then everyone should prepare their own meals, and I suggest we only eat out of cans.
So everyone needs to prepare their own food and drink to prevent contamination. Considering all that, at the very end, Macready passes Childs a bottle, and as he takes a swig, the main theme kicks in as if to underpin that something very important has just happened, and Macready chuckles to himself darkly. With that, the film ends. What's the implication? Well, Childs doesn't worry about the idea of the bottle being contaminated because he's infected already. And this is what Macready realises, making him laugh as we go to credits, leaving us to imagine that immediately after this, Macready tries to kill him with the flamethrower as he and the monster have one final fight. But maybe it's not that. Maybe Childs was so exhausted as he sat there waiting to die that he's simply given up hope. So much so he just doesn't care about being infected anymore. Who knows? Like, no one knows, because even now, 40 years later, people still debate whether or not Childs is the monster here. Now, I'm not going to present some crazy new theory proving once and for all that he was or wasn't infected. I'm pointing out that this right here is the perfect way to end this story. This is peak horror. Notice how with the clues being sprinkled in, they're not neutral clues. Every last one of them hints that Childs is probably the monster, but there's just enough wiggle room for doubt in there that he might not be. Imagine a different ending where Charles instead transforms into the monster, then MacReady blows him away and he's the sole survivor, and then maybe the army comes and saves him. That ending, while being definitely the more generic ending for a horror story to have, just wouldn't have been as fitting, nor as memorable, nor as terrifying. And it certainly wouldn't have caused the 40-year-long debate around what this ending means. You can point at Inception as being a similar film due to its open end that leaves you thinking as you leave the cinema. And sure, The Thing has that, but instead of merely leaving us thinking, this one leaves us terrified, as the paranoia, the distrust, the uncertainty is so masterfully crafted we feel it still, even as the credits roll. People argue tenaciously about who was or wasn't the Thing in the end, as if to satisfy their own uncertainty, because they hate it. They hate that feeling of unease. But that feeling is the point. This film, it's all about the paranoia of not knowing who you can trust. It's a good thing that John Carpenter's never come out and said the answer to this one, because that's how you do paranoia. If you ever confirm anything, such as throwing a slam dunk clue proving that yes, this is for a fact the case, the paranoia ends then and there. By the way, this video is actually part of a larger series called One Last Scene, where me and a bunch of other video essayists like Nando V Movies, Hello Future Me, Just Right, and many more have all come together to analyse our favourite endings in all of fiction. If you'd like to check out this series, there is a link to the playlist in the description below. Now, you can inject uncertainty into your horror however you like. You can do it like Predator, where we're endlessly trying to see where the monster is in the trees, knowing he could kill at any moment. Or it could be The Shining, and the uncertainty stems from Jack's deteriorating sanity as he grows more deranged with each passing scene. But for The Thing, of course it stems from the paranoia of who is or isn't the monster. There's something special about this film, because with Predator, let's say, while it is a great film, it's also not that scary a film. Like, there are lots of horrors out there which are more terrifying. And I think the reason why is there's a kink in the concept that stops it from being too terrifying. It's true these guys are stuck in a jungle without the hope for external help, which creates this lovely feeling of isolation that almost all great horrors have. But at least they have each other as they fight the alien. And this feeling of camaraderie between the soldiers, it keeps that feeling of true isolation at bay, because at least there's something around them they can rely on. With The Thing, though, it's the exact opposite. Someone in their team is the monster. Predator's scariness is kind of limited by its own concept. None of the characters feel too isolated in this film, with the exception of Arnie in the very, very end. Forget the execution sides of things. Let's look at just the concept here. You can't have a story concept that lends itself to horror better than this. While Predator has most of the stuff around the protagonist feel uncertain, The Thing has everything around the protagonist feel uncertain. And this creates this pervading feel of isolation and paranoia all the way through. You will find the less your protagonist can rely on things, whether that be their own sanity, the characters around them, a weapon like a flamethrower that keeps malfunctioning, or even a mere torchlight that keeps flickering on and off. And yes, I know that last one's a bit of a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason. It works. The more stuff you can have like this, the more terrifying your story becomes. Part of the beauty in good horror lies in how the writer gets creative with how they create their uncertainty. If you're writing one yourself, don't set out to copy The Thing or any of the story. Never imitate something like that, because when you do, you'll only ever be second best. Instead, find your own way to keep the audience guessing. And if you really want to scare the willies out of them, leave them guessing long after the story is over. It's a shame what happened to John Carpenter after he made The Thing. Despite it being a masterpiece, it more or less ended his career because it underperformed so much in the box office. Sometimes what's best and what makes the most money are two very different things. But if you love The Thing and want to see more of Carpenter's spooky goodness, a great film to check out is his other horror classic Halloween. While it's not quite as good as The Thing, but then again, what is? It's still a true landmark in the horror genre that was so scary you can still feel its influence in horror movies made today. And if you like, you can watch it right now on Mubi, the sponsor of today's video. What I love so much about Mubi is while they often show great, well-known films, right now for me they're showing American Psycho, Snowpiercer and Brazil, they also go out of their way to give you a ton of indie stuff too. This is honestly the main part of why I use Mubi so much, because they're constantly adding films that I've never heard of and have loved to bits once I've seen them. So, if you're in the mood for one of the best horror films ever made, one you can watch right now in a bunch of countries, I know the UK is one of them. Also, and you may be asking, why am I making a horror-themed video this close to Christmas? I don't know, don't judge me. All you've got to do is click my link in the description, and you'll get a free month of Mubi just so you can try it out. And hey, if you don't like it, you can cancel at any time, and it won't cost you a penny. With so many cool films there and a free month to give it a go, you have nothing to lose by just diving in, giving it a go and seeing if it's right for you. If all of this sounds good to you, do click my link in the description and get started with Mubi today. Anyway, thanks for watching, keep writing, and I'll see you guys next time on The Closer Look.